1. Good morning. This is Animal on Control. Welcome to the voice chat. These calls are pre-recording for uploading to social media, and by joining a call, you're consenting to being recorded. Anyone wishing to join a call should email me at animaloncontrol@gmail.com, and I will reply with instructions. Today's topics: search and rescue dogs post-mortem, Arkansas pit bull bans, abuse of statistics, and potpourri. Joining me is Rodney. Welcome back.
Hello.
You're on mute, pal. Oh.
Yeah, sorry. I'm getting better with the mute button.
That's all right. Yeah, that's cool. Let me start with a share. And actually, there was something else I wanted to. Where's the? Why is this? Oh, is this what I want? Now, can you see this? Oh, yeah. 7 dead pit bulls. I wanted to just go over this real quick. Can you see this? The 7 dead pit bulls.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. All right. I just want to go over this real quick. 7 dead pit bulls, including puppy, found dumped in trash bags in New York. Now, who do you think's doing this? Is it pit nutters or dog haters?
This is definitely an owner dump for
Yep.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, hey, if they 7 dead pit bulls is 7 dead pit bulls one way or another.
That's right.
Overall good news.
Right. But what's interesting is that so it says here the Nassau County SPCA is offering a $5,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest and conviction of whoever killed the animals and dumped their remains. So they've got $5,000 in cash to throw at this. It's like, don't you have anything better to do?
And for people who don't know where Nassau County is, that's Long Island. So,
yep.
You know, hey, just a beautiful part of America, relatively densely populated. And you know, that's what pit nutters are doing. Another community they're ruining with their bullshit.
Well, I had a thought too is that, okay, what you could do is you could kill a bunch of pit bulls, dump them, and then turn yourself in and get $5,000.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know legally where your state would be, like if there's a good loophole there, but you know, it's definitely worth thinking through.
Yeah. I'm snarking. I remember back when I was working in New York about 25 years ago, and I was going to lunch with some coworkers, and there was a bus. We walked up to this bus stop, and the bus had this big sign on the side. It was $10,000 reward for turning in anyone who shot a cop. You know, they call it cop shot or whatever. So I nudged one of my coworkers and I said, look, yeah, you go shoot a cop, turn yourself in and get $10,000. Somehow I'm not sure that's the way it works, but you never know. You could try it.
No, I mean, you know, obviously for anybody dumb enough, it's a joke, you know,
yeah,
the emphasis.
But that's the thing is, yeah, they're willing to throw, but don't they have an issue like SPCA? It's like their shelters are overflowing. But in one reason these animals get dumped like this is because they don't take, owner surrenders or even pick up loose dogs anymore because their shelters are overflowing. Typically with these things, pit bulls most of the time. And, it's all due to no-kill policies because they can't, the shelter fills up and they can't do anything. They can't clear the inventory because nobody wants them. They can't euthanize them. So they're just stuck with them forever. Again, it goes back to the one of the premises of dog culture is dogs have an unlimited right to life. They all have an unconditional right to live forever. But in any case, I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit there. I also wanted to talk about
it's interesting that the owner, whoever they were, he or she, wasted the pit bulls instead of just turning them loose in the street or a public park or something like that,
Oh
which
yeah, I mean
dog
you
owners
could
are prone to do.
you could argue that this is a responsible owner because, yeah, rather than just letting them form some extremely dangerous feral dog pack, they off them instead, perhaps saving a life in the process, or at least some injuries. So, you could argue that, okay, maybe it's not the most responsible thing to do, but it's not the most irresponsible thing either.
Yeah, in a weird way. I mean, like, if I'm a betting man, the owner of 7 pit bulls is a complete piece of shit. But maybe he had maybe he came to his senses in some way.
Yeah. And who
You
knows?
know,
They may have more pit bulls. It's like these may just be rejects from some dogfighting operation. I wanted to segue off of that. I want to talk about search and rescue dogs just for about 5 minutes or so. Last week we talked about the use of search and rescue dogs, because search and rescue dogs are used by dog nutters to promote the notion that dogs are just the most amazing thing in creation. Okay, search and rescue dogs are hard proof that dogs are super smart, super sentient, super loyal, super brave, super selfless. They just make every situation way better than it would otherwise be. Now, of course, we're skeptical of that. Now, it's interesting as I brought up the Surfside condominium tower collapse from a few years ago, and they brought in dogs to find people. And what was interesting was, I mean, we discussed that in detail. Folks can re-listen to that. But it turns out now this is the building pre-collapse. And you see it's sort of L-shaped, right? You've got two arms. And it was this segment on the right-hand side here was what collapsed. The left portion stayed standing. So you had an outcome that, where was that? Oh, yeah, here's, if you look at this picture here, there's a search and rescue mutt sniffing around the remains of the building. So let me get back out of here. Yep. So, and this is what it looked like after. So part of it stayed standing. This is the rubble pile at the bottom of the photograph here. Now, you're talking about how many people survived or how many were rescued. I mean, if you were in this portion of the building, the standing portion, obviously your prospects are very good. Probably you were able to evacuate safely or perhaps with minor injury. On the other hand, if you're in this portion that's completely pancaked down, your options were not that good. Now, I pursued some additional due diligence on this, and it turns out, as far as I can tell, they actually pulled 3 people alive out of this rubble pile. But the question is, did the dogs contribute anything positive to that outcome? In other words, would those people have been saved without the dogs? Now, pursuant to last week's discussion, supposedly anybody rescued by the dogs was confidential. Like they couldn't say who they'd rescued or even if they'd rescued anyone. So, yeah, they had dogs sniffing all over this, but who knows what that actually, or what positive that contributes to the outcome. The dog reacts. It could be to a live person. It could be to a dead person. It could be, a package of decomposing hot dogs. Who knows? Rover's not telling. So I wanted to just post mortem on that and see if any. I think a chef said she might join. She might have had some thoughts on this. Like she and I have been bashing service dogs for quite a while, and deservedly so. I don't know, because this is the same kind of thing, but yeah, I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on this. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this today, anyway.
It's kind of, if you own a condo in Florida that was built in the 70s or 80s, get out before they do an assessment.
Yeah.
Like, in the wake of this, I was reading that there's a ton of assessments being done. So if you own a condo you're responsible for your unit's share of the maintenance and upkeep.
Yep.
And because some of these places were built, you know, either a long time ago, they're really cutting corners, whatever. People are getting stuck with like crazy condo like structural repair bills.
Yep.
So I apologize if my GPS is going off, but yeah, that's one thing. So if you own a condo in Florida that's built in the 70s or 80s, get out of it. Always buy a new condo. Never buy an old one. And
Yeah.
then, no, I think the question remains. So, you know, we've got 3 people that were pulled from the rubble. Were those 3 people even found by dogs? I don't know
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
know that, right?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, that I don't know. In fact, I only found out, it was interesting, it was a mother and her daughter survived. Basically, when the building sort of split, it kind of collapsed in a V shape. They just fell 60 feet straight down into the basement, and they were busted up pretty well, but at least the daughters had a pretty decent recovery, and there was one other person.
That's
I
good.
couldn't even find out who that was. I guess maybe there's some confidentiality here, as we noted last week. You know, maybe some people don't want their names put on TV. But that's the other thing too. Is, I mean, but these stories are interesting, because it's like, okay, you survived this, or you were rescued from this, but it, you know, the how is very interesting, right? Like, how did they do that? And I can't really tell. I mean, it seems that they just, you know, they brought in some cranes and heavy equipment, and a bunch of, you know, rescue workers just with buckets. So the workers would pick up the small pieces, and they use the cranes to hoist some of the larger chunks of, you know, concrete off the rubble pile, right? So, but
Yeah, so
that's
bottom line, we still don't know if the dog made a difference or not.
yeah.
Those 3 people. Yeah.
And somehow I think that they didn't, because if they did, let's say you could say, okay, this person was rescued by a dog, that would be all over the place, right? I mean, there's the, I guess, the implication or the
Yeah, it would be.
insinuation that there is, but it's like, okay, what, who was actually saved by the dogs, and how did the dog do that? Unlike, remember that 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 spam comment I featured last, you know, raises a question. It's like, okay, like, what did the dogs contribute to this you know, to that outcome? Maybe if they hadn't had the dogs, would they have rescued 5 people? Who knows? Or 10 people? Or if they, or maybe if they, you know, or fewer people, like, we don't know. But the insinuation is that these, you know, search and rescue dogs are the greatest thing in creation. So
Well, did the dog find its toy that they hid in the rubble? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's what Sheepy brought up. You know, perhaps, you know, that's I don't know, does that contribute anything good? Well, they do that to make the dog feel good, like they actually accomplished something. Even though, I mean, do dogs have a sense of accomplishment? I mean, isn't that anthropomorphization? Or are they just using that as an excuse to, you know, play with a dog? Like, who knows, right? And I think it's what's going on in those cases is the dog is, you know, brought in, like you said last week, it's ass covering. So whoever's in charge of this recovery can say, oh yeah, we did everything, we even brought in the dogs, right? So, and it's also a propaganda stunt used to make, you know, Fido and Rover look good, because these level 5 dog foamers think that, well, they believe that, and they promote the notion that dogs make everything better, you know, including, you know, an outcome like this. So anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
man.
want to dwell on that for too long. Shifting gears, you know, because you put something in the Discord the other day regarding to this Sherwood, Arkansas, is considering lifting their current BSL legislation. Sherwood, Arkansas, it's a small city of about 32,000. And they currently have restrictions on pit bulls and perhaps some other dog breed. dog breeds. What's interesting is, though, before you even get into that, I'm going to bring up this. This is a preemption map of the United States, and the orange states have what's known as preemption laws. And anybody who doesn't know what a preemption law is, well, needs to familiarize themselves with those type of rules. But what that means is it's a state level law restricting the restrictions. In other words, that stipulates that the lower jurisdictions, say cities and counties, cannot regulate dogs by breed. So essentially, it's equal protection for dogs, at least amongst the breeds. So say that, pit bulls have the same protections as, miniature schnauzers, for example. So you look at all these, and the green states do not have preemption, meaning that at least in theory, the lower jurisdictions can ban them. So if you look at this map where I'm circling with my mouse pointer, that's the state of Arkansas that currently allows these type of restrictions. So there's been, and I'm sure, some of these pit nutter organizations like, Bad Rap and Best Friends and so forth have been, agitating to get rid of this ban. The thing is that Sherwood, Arkansas, like in the scheme of things, and my, apologies to any Sherwood people who might be listening, but it's really not that important. It's not Chicago or LA or New York or Miami. But what's interesting about this is that, well, there's a few things I want to get into here. Where is that? Okay, here it is, where it's highlighted here. Proposed Arkansas bill would prohibit animal breed bans in cities and counties. So, and I've been following this on Dogs Bite, because if you go back to this map, the nutter organizations want to turn this entire map orange. So any state that does not have, they want to implement preemption in all these so-called green states. Because what that would do is, that's why I said you got to keep your eye on the ball. So, if your local restriction is important to you, you got to pay attention to it at the state level, because if Arkansas turns orange, right, in other words, they pass this preemption measure, all those local restrictions are going to be vacated, gone. And it doesn't matter what the town, the mayor, the town council, or the people want. That's irrelevant, because again, the state says that you must allow these things. And that expresses itself in all kinds of ways. You could say that not only are people allowed to keep them in the jurisdiction, but landlords have to allow them, there can be no restrictions of any type, even on private property. So, and some of these laws, vary, but that's really where you want to keep your eye on these things, because that's more really, the state law is more important, right? Because even if the municipal ban is repealed, provided the state is not a preemption state, you could reenact it later. But if the state becomes preemption, then you can't, right? So that's really what people got to keep their eye on, if you're interested in doing these things. And I wanted to read some excerpts of this article. So anyway, something that some residents are hoping won't happen. So currently there is a ban on pit bulls, similar breeds inside city limits under breed-specific legislation, which animal control says causes problems when trying to adopt out mixed breed dogs. So what they're saying is this pit bull restriction makes it harder to adopt out pit bulls, which kind of raises a question. Why are they trying to adopt out pit bulls at all if there's a pit bull ban? They shouldn't even be trying to adopt them out. A sensible restriction would be that, like, any pit bull that shows up in a city shelter gets the juice, period. not like, well, okay, we'll shift it out of the jurisdiction or we'll relabel it something else and try to get it adopted out. And that's part of the problem with a lot of these laws is they're not sufficiently comprehensive. So then it says officials said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
The whole thing is just infuriating. It's, oh, the big mean pit bull ban won't let us adopt out pit bulls and our shelters are overcrowded. And don't you feel bad for the doggy? It's really sickening that people would make such a cynical argument. I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't just so wretched and just awful to, they know what they're doing when they run these stupid ass stories, you know, oh
Yep.
no, our shelters are full, so we've got to get rid of this reasonable law. And they don't even address why the law was enacted in the first place.
Oh, exactly. Because I mean, you could say too, is I mean, you know, and anybody who's been following me is I don't think that restricting them is a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. The problem is that the implementations, 49 times out of 50 are a joke. What sort of raises, there's either the penalties are very weak, there's no enforcement, but then that raises a question, well, why is that the case? Right? Because, well, because there's so much sympathy. Well, there's so much sympathy for dogs and dog owners generally, right? It's like, look, they're all just these pure and perfect fur babies sent from heaven. Why would you want to restrict them? And if somebody gets killed, it's like, well, look, it's just an active dog. Right? I mean, dog works in mysterious ways. There's nothing with that. But that's part of the thing.
The one thing to point out with that part of the story is they're using a pit bull named Hash Brown, which is just, how stupid can these people be? But the poster child for this shelter overcrowding is a pit bull named Hash Brown, aka Loco, which is the nickname they've given this animal. So if its nickname is Loco, this is just an uncontrollable shit beast that doesn't belong anywhere near people or in a community.
Oh, and they know that. They know that, yeah, because this is...
In the adoption posting for this thing, they say he needs a 6-foot fence, single owner home. So the poster child for this...
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Yeah, you're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit. Yeah, that's okay. No, you're breaking up a little bit there. But so anyway, it says, they have this, Captain Jamie Hartman, social services captain for the Sherwood Police Department, says a large percentage of dogs coming through their dogs are mixed breed pit bulls, right? But again, why they if I was to enact a pit bull ban, one of the provisions would be that any pit bull that comes in the shelter, boom, gets the juice. I mean, literally within minutes. Like it just blammo, done. Take it out the back to the dumpster, done, right? But that's the thing is they don't. Again, the provisions are very, very weak. So it says, so the large percentage of dogs coming through the doors are mixed breed pit bulls like Hash Brown. Now, the thing is to say it's a mixed breed, it's a pit mix. What does that mean? Well, it's a pit mixed with another pit. It's a pit bull, right? So it says, I love this. Everything we've seen from Hash Brown indicates that he would be a really, really great dog, right? But then it goes on to say, okay, everything. So it says Hash Brown does have some setbacks. And I think you might have been looking at a different article than this one. But here it says, as he needs to be in a cat-free home. So what does that mean? Well, it means the dog has attacked and killed other animals, right? And needs a tall fence, right? So they know, but that's the whole problem with this is that this is a known dangerous dog. So if we can't get rid of some of them, how do we get rid of all of them? So really what needs to happen first is, you have a dog like this, clearly that's proven. It's not just an illegal pit bull. It's an illegal pit bull that's a known dangerous dog. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to adopt it out. And it goes back to like, but that's sort of where the repeal gains traction, or like, you could say, how being the devil's advocate, I mean, clearly this isn't really accomplishing much because, you have like known dangerous dog breeds. So the current city ordinance bans mixed breeds like hash brown from being within city limits. He has been in the shelter for more than a year and a half. That's another problem. Why are they given like all this leeway? A year and a half, like this dog, clearly this dog is a complete disaster. I think regardless of breed, let's say it was a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd, this dog is a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster. He should have gotten the juice 17 months ago. But yet he's allowed. Yeah, he's allowed to live. And they're trying to adopt him out. And all that, in spite of the fact that there is a pit bull restriction in effect. Now, of course, they want to repeal the ban because it'll make it, at least, I guess, somewhat easier to adopt them out, right? I mean, but that's the other thing, too, is like, we talk about results or baseline. Like, if there was no pit bull ban in this town, would it be easier to adopt the dog out, or would he still be in the shelter, or would they, because pretty much anybody that adopts this dog is going to return it. It's either hopefully, right, it's going to again attack somebody, destroy property, cause a problem. And that's why a lot of these dogs, they just endlessly cycle back and forth to the shelter. It's like, oh yeah, Fido's been returned for the 8th time, but no fault of his, right? It's just the irresponsible owner. So yeah, I mean, this whole situation is a disgusting, overcomplicated, just dumpster fire. Really, it's terrible. But really what you got to keep your eye on is what's at the state level, because, if you want to, restrict these things by breed, you want to make sure that state level preemption doesn't pass, or if you have one, get it repealed. Although I think it's difficult to do, but really it's at the a lot of the political battle is really being fought at the state level. So.
Yeah, how's my service now? Am I coming in
You're good.
okay?
Yeah, loud and clear. Yep, sound good.
Yeah, just like, so Loco, aka Hash Brown, this dog requires 6 feet, the 6-foot fence. I mean, it's like the Hannibal Lecter of dogs. You've got to keep it in like an isolated cell. And they're knowingly warehousing these dangerous animals, these weapons of mutt destruction, just waiting on somebody dumb enough to bring it into your neighborhood. And if the decision to adopt this obviously dangerous dog only affected the owners, that'd be one thing.
Yeah.
But some dumbass is going to bring this thing, like when they find their rube or their mark to pawn this thing off on, that person's going to bring it into your neighborhood around your kids and destroy your quality of life. Because of a misguided religious belief in, all dogs go to heaven or whatever, tenet of the cult this applies to. So,
all dogs deserve a second chance, right? Or third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. Well, that's the other thing too, is like with these adoptions and they're looking for, it's a proverbial unicorn home where, they got all these requirements. I did actually, it was a monologue I put out last year sometime, was called Conditionals, because, the premise is that only dogs give unconditional love. And I said, I mean, that's on its face, That is patently false, mainly because owning any dog comes with some conditions. You got to take care of it, right? But you take a dog like this, it's like, what are the conditions? Well, you have to, it's like single, usually they need a single woman, right? No men, no, or I guess maybe it could be a lesbian couple, possibly, but it's like no men, no children, no other pets, no hats, no fluorescent lights, no model railroads. You got all these.
It's like you're transporting nitroglycerin in like a covered wagon or something. It's like, don't do, I mean, the level of hazard is crazy. And I think the point is, because it's important to just like bring it back to the point, this is the poster child for the dog nutters that want to lift the ban. The Hannibal
Yep.
Lecter dog is who they're rallying behind. And,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ban was enacted after a 9-year-old baby, a little kid, just a 9-year-old, was mauled so badly by 2 loose pit bulls that his mother had to cremate his body. She couldn't have an open face funeral like you normally do at the viewing. And you know what this kid do? He went to check the mail. That's
Yep.
all he did.
As
So
we were
at
talking
what
about
point?
last week, it's like you don't check the mail unless you're in full body armor and are carrying a Thompson submachine gun. Those.
Yeah, with like an MRAP behind you, just ride out, in the MRAP to go check them. So, look, it comes down to a point where you can't argue with these people. You're just going to say, are you okay with spitting in this kid's mother's face? Are you okay with what happened? Because if you're
Yep.
for this, if you're actively working to repeal a common sense county ordinance, because if you want to own a pit bull, all you have to do is city ordinance. If you want to own a pit bull, all you have to do is move out to like the county area outside the city limits. It's not
Yep.
imposing an undue burden on anyone. So it's just they are so religious, full of religious zeal to knock down all barriers wherever they are to pit bulls. A small town in the middle of nowhere came under the eye of the dog nutter Sauron. And, they are looking this child's family in the face and spitting on them. That's what it comes down to. If
Yep.
you are pushing for the repeal of this common sense little city ordinance, that's what you're doing. You're a
Yeah.
bad person.
And it's not even
That's
like,
all I can say.
even if you could argue that it doesn't really help much, but the thing is that, the lower jurisdictions have a right to restrict the keeping of animals. And, they could say that, like, well, because they will restrict them because they kill kids. You don't even need that. We'll just restrict them because they smell bad. I mean, that should be like sufficient reason to do this. Like, it doesn't even require the highest standard even. But you made a good
And you just
point
got to
just
cut the
now.
Gordian knot. It's just cut the Gordian knot. I'm not going to go in all these circular little, well, actually, BSL doesn't really work and blah, blah, blah. You know how they always trot out these arguments. I don't care. I'm sick of seeing 9-year-olds die, and that's it. That's the whole argument. Either they're for it because they know as soon as this gets repealed, there's going to be another kid that dies. And not just dies. It's not like he passed away in his sleep. He died getting eaten by 2 monsters. So
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, if you got the psychology or the moral failing to be okay with this type of thing happening, then there's no middle ground for me and you. I'm going to oppose
Yeah.
everything you do out of spite because you're just a shitty person. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, like come on.
Yeah. Well, you made a good point
Sorry,
too.
that's
It's
a
interesting. Well,
sore
no, that's
spot.
fine. No, that's fine. You made an interesting point just now that, it's interesting that they're using this hash brown, like you said, as sort of the poster dog for repealing the ban. But particularly if you read this, I mean, I say read between the lines, but basically what's indicated here is it's not just some random pit bull that's not a known dangerous dog. At least that'd be like one thing, but here, and perhaps some of the other articles, they've indicated that this is a known dangerous dog, right? It's a dog that's known to use violence to get what it wants, and that is the poster mutt for this repeal. why not use, you can't find a pit bull somewhere that hasn't attacked somebody and use that as
I
a
know it's
dog?
perfect. These quote unquote people, which I don't think they're really rise to the title of being a person at this point, but they impeach themselves constantly.
Yep.
Constantly. They make our argument for us at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. But part of the thing too is that if you want to implement something like this, like successfully, right? If you want to be like the poster child for, restricting dogs by breed, and really the BSL provision that makes sense would be to just, limit them by size and weight. So that sort of takes a breed ID game off the table. It's like, look, if the largest cat you can have is 20 pounds, let's just apply that to dogs. Because then you don't have to worry about, because, I know I'm very cynical about this, but you get into it's like, oh, what kind of dog is it? Well, it's a lab mix. It's a bulldog cross. It's a terrier mix. It's a staffy. And it's interesting is one statistic that, and I wanted to, as we get into this, I want to examine some of the statistics here, or not just the statistics in this space, but the statistics.
But that's the gap in the BSL argument is you can play an endless shell game and BSL is imperfect. And I do agree with BSL, but it's like you got to acknowledge that there are soft spots in that strategy that you just,
well, I think
you're
it's
always going to be
why,
covering up.
like, we agree that really what you want to do is like, how do you do something like this in a way that's effective? Because, like I said, 98% of these fail for one reason or the other. Either they're not enforced, or the penalties are practically non-existent, very weak, or it gets repealed. Right. So I'm thinking, okay, but how can we, and sometimes even people misquote me. It was funny, at one point I was reading something, it was on the Reddits, and so they were talking about me, and they're saying, that animal uncontrol guy is right. BSL doesn't work. And I said, well, no, I'm not saying that. Simply that it's something like that is really part of a process. It's not something you just do, given the whole, the dumpster fire that is this domain. So I think what's critical is you want to criminalize dog attacks. Because if you do that, well, first of all, you want to do that anyway, because a pit bull ban should not get every other dog in existence completely off the hook for everything. That is fundamentally unjust. So I think you want to criminalize dog attacks, regardless of if you have a BSL provision or what that stipulates. But I think what it also does is that also gives you a better rationale for banning them, because you think, okay, these things, they get repealed left and right. They're not enforced. The penalties are very weak. But you're thinking, okay, why are those things the case? Why does that happen? I said that happens because, and again, dog nuts generally own this problem. They've conditioned everyone to believe, almost everyone, not us, but many people, that the dog is always right. Like you pointed out last week, or maybe at another point, that in the mutt religion, there's no original sin. I mean, dogs are all perfect. Right. So any bad outcome, like you talk about the 9-year-old that was completely dismembered, in their mindset, that outcome is somehow justified. Why? Because dogs did it. However, if you criminalize dog attacks, you say, okay, these outcomes are not justified. They're not even good faith mistakes. This is criminal. This is criminal. Okay, these things are being used to promote criminality. If what is it, felonize or felonize these things, make them felonies. Now you've got a better rationale for making, enacting a ban that can actually stick, because right now the problem is, why would you ban something that's legit to do? Like
Yeah.
why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. It's funny. You use like an allegory. I think I share this story often. You talk about, going after people for negligent homicide or manslaughter or whatever. I have an acquaintance, not somebody I know well, but did 8 to 10 for DUI manslaughter. And he didn't mean to kill anybody. Let me get through the details of that case. Here's what happened. He drove by himself to a party that had an open bar. And as according to witnesses, these were in the court documents, he proceeded to ingest in excess of 20 shots of Jägermeister. And you're thinking, oh, God. So he did that. He pounded 20 shots of Jägermeister, got back in his car, took off down the road, crashed head on with another vehicle, killing the driver and injuring some other occupants of the vehicle. Then, he was arrested and, charged with DUI manslaughter. He was convicted. Interestingly, he was in his early 60s at the time. And in the court case, because actually the sentencing guidelines for that are like 20 to 25 years.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Like he killed
rightfully so. But the judge, interestingly, the judge said that, given your age, that would make this a life sentence. And I don't think that was the intention of the law. So she said, I'm going to cut you a break. I'm giving you 8 to 10. And that's like, I'm being very, very lenient with you.
Mm-hmm.
What was interesting about that is it's sort of like, why do we go after people like that? Because, the thing is that, recklessly endangering people in that manner is criminal. He is a criminal. But let's say, if you were to apply, sort of dog philosophy to that space, here's what you would have. The consensus would be that getting shit-faced and running people over is perfectly okay. It's perfect. You want to pound, 3 bottles of wine or a liter of vodka and go run somebody over. It's all good. And anybody who objects is a spawn of Hitler and Satan, right? That's the consensus. Yeah. But then somebody steps up and says, hey, you know what? We should ban Jägermeister because just that, not other, just the sale of Jägermeister because it's indicated in these drunk driving incidents. But it raises a question, why would you restrict something that enables something that's totally perfectly okay to do? That's the problem. And that's a problem in this space. It goes back to, it's like getting rid of these things, in a way that's effective is part of a process. So really the step 1, return to order, right? Whatever the laws are, they should all be executed. 2, criminalize dog attacks. So now we have a functioning law and order environment. We've criminalized dog attacks, which again, gives us a rationale for banning them. Just saying what these people are doing is criminal. It's not, it's not Fido's not protecting his territory, which just happened to be someone else's property, coincidentally. It's not a good faith accident. It's criminal. And they say, oh, okay, we're doing this to address or to mitigate criminality. Yeah, now it makes a lot more sense because the thing is, way too many people who advocate for these restrictions are not opposed to dog attacks at all. They're like, you know what? My rover has every right to go onto your property and attack you. And if he does, it's all your fault because you didn't build a fence. You don't understand dog behavior. And you're just a bad person because it's one of their other premises is dogs are perfect judges of human character. Oh, and one more thing, let's ban pit bulls. And like I said, it just doesn't make any sense. But now if you say, okay, those kind of things are criminal, they say, oh, yeah, now it's like, okay, yeah, let's get rid of them. Makes a lot more sense. I mean, that's my perspective on this. But
it puts a lot more weight on the shelters and stuff like that when you've got a criminal statute on the books and you have convictions for it. it shifts the whole conversation. And then, that's why I think strict liability, charge the owner when
Yep.
the dog does something. The goal is to get rid of, the dog
Well,
problem.
what we want to do is you're thinking, okay, problem statement. What's the
Yeah.
problem? And the problem is you have a pet, a type of pet that's injuring a lot of people. Because I think the deaths, and that's the other thing to keep in mind too, and I wanted to talk about this some more, but death is not the only bad outcome. Right. But so we're thinking, okay, what's the problem? Like, okay, you have all these injuries, say hospitalizations related to dog attacks. That's that impacts a lot of people. That's hundreds of thousands of people a year, which kind of makes you wonder about the statistics. Like, okay, they put 800,000 people in the emergency room, and that number is probably wrong. It's probably twice that, but only 100 or so die. Don't you find that kind of odd? I do.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be statistical shell games. I mean, what is the old adage?
Oh, yeah, I want to
There's
talk about
lies,
that
there's
some.
damn lies in statistics.
Yep. Yeah, because I'm thinking it's got to be a lot higher. I want to talk about that. So, but you say, okay, that's the problem. And like, let's say part of the problem with some place like Sherwood is it's not a big enough sample size. Like when I was blogging last decade, I would talk about the Miami pit bull ban quite a bit. Now vacated at the state level due to some changes made to state laws. So now if you live
Preempted.
in Miami, well, you could own pit bulls before. You just had to call it, but that's a bulldog cross. Okay, fine, But and they would have, and I would blog about, fatal dog attacks and maulings and all kinds of dog related problems in Miami because that's a better sample size because it's whatever, 1 million people. It's also very diverse, right? You've got all these different kind of, melting pot of cultures and things like that. It was like, okay, we'll use like hospitalizations as a result from dog attacks. That's a problem we want to mitigate. So let's say we're a big city and let's say we have 500 a year, right? I want to bring that number down. How do we do that? Right? Like what measures could we take? And there's things like we could, and typically if you go to dog people, they're going to be like, well, we need to educate people in dog behavior. It's like, no. That's just victim blaming. We could, restrict, for example, known dangerous dog breeds like pit bulls and the like. That sounds like, it sounds like a reasonable idea because they're disproportionately represented in those things. We could criminalize dog attacks, right? We could clear the streets of, the really bad, the totally irresponsible dog owners. Also, I said that, we'll have a one and done policy. Any dog that does send somebody to the hospital, the dog gets the juice. It's not going to be rehabilitated or trained out of it. It's gone. It's done. Boom, deleted, gone, right? With minimal due process because, dogs don't have a right to life, nor is owning a dog a right. So it's like just juice them, done. Okay, so we could do one of those things or some of those things, all those things. But I want the number to come down. So that's the metric. We'll use that as, but you never see, it's interesting, you never see anything like that. You never say, okay, we did these things and the number of, like I said, hospitalizations goes down. You almost never, the only time I've actually heard that was when I did a monologue last year and I talked about the stray dog policy in Romania, of all places. And they started culling these feral dog packs, which of course is driving, dog nutters insane. But supposedly the number of at least the number of dog attacks related to those things is down 40%. And I'm like, hey, that's good progress. Not perfect, but you almost never hear a number like that. Usually the thing is, it's like, well, yeah, we need a spay neuter policy and better training and all that crap. It's like, okay, when has that actually produced positive results? And you never hear that.
Yeah, and that's very true. And, I think a realization has just dawned on me that's, maybe a point to make is the dog nutter solution to all stray dogs is adoption. Put them in a shelter, warehouse them, and then somebody will take this dog home. Well, we've reached peak dog saturation, and
Yep.
dogs can breed a lot faster than, we'll say, new people come online that want a dog. It's saturated. Everybody that wants a dog has one, but the dogs breed so quickly and in such numbers that you're out of people that want to ruin their life with the dog. You're out of people that want to wreck their life
Yep.
with some street mutt. So it's really the only adult solution is euthanasia. And euthanasia is painless for people who want to I don't know, make a point of that. There's a reason we practice it. Animal overpopulation happens. We do it with all kinds of other wild animals. Dogs aren't an exception to that. So anyway, sorry, I just the light bulb went off thinking about, I don't know, the supply demand curve of dogs, and you could think of
Well,
dogs as
thing
like a
is, yeah, well,
commodity. Yeah,
that's
where
something else they say, but they don't. It's like, okay, you want to get these things brought into shelters and adopted out, but that doesn't happen either. Like these feral dog packs just keep exploding in population. It's like, okay, fine, you go do that, but that
it's
never
not a solution.
happens.
It's
Well, it's
not a
not a
solution
solution
anymore.
because they can't do it.
Yeah.
Like you said, they can't. I mean, yeah, the shelters are all overflowing, but that's the thing is that's due to these no-kill policies,
Yeah.
right? Like, and even the Romania situation. I mean, it's not real. What they're doing isn't even really culling. Culling is Rule 223. It means you just varmint them like we
Yeah.
do with feral hogs, or they're trapped and immediately euthanized, perhaps.
Yeah.
But in Romania, what's interesting, what their policy was, what they're doing would have been considered a perfectly sensible animal control policy in the United States, say circa 1980. Because what they're doing is they trap them, they catch them, they bring them into the dog pound, and where they get to, they can stay in the pound for 2 weeks, and then they get to juice. And that's what 40, 50 years ago, that's what we did, right? So it's really
Yeah.
not culling. It's more like it's something that would have been. I think it's, like I said, culling is Rule 223. If you got stray dogs in your back 40, you get out the scope rifle and delete them. That's culling. But that's not what they're doing. But still, even the dog nuts are like foaming at the mouth over that. But again, they say, oh, we'll have a spay neuter program. I wanted to, get talking about that. We've kind of gone off on a tangent, but it's a good one. Joe from Animal Abuse in Hungary, I think he may be able to join one of these calls next week. I've been communicating with him a bit in the background, and but he did a video about a year ago or year and a half ago, indicating, like sort of the origins of these feral dog packs. And he said, really, there's three sources. You have lost dogs, you have abandoned dogs, right? And that's where like these, people dumping dead pit bulls it's a lot better than dumping live pit bulls, right? So you have lost dogs, abandoned dogs, and you also have dogs that are born inside of these feral dog packs. So one of the solutions offered often is we'll have a spay neuter program. We'll trap them, neuter them, and release them. And I'm not like, my reaction to that isn't just no, it's oh fuck no, because you're turning dangerous animals loose in the community. Like, that's criminal. But the interesting thing too is, even aside from that, is that really only addresses the third source of the problem, and it only partially addresses it, because you're not going to trap and neuter them all. You're not. So they're going to continue. So what's going to happen is, under that policy, the packs still increase in size, but only at a slower rate. So instead of having 20% more, compounding every year, you only have 10, which is not a solution. You want the number to go down. We want fewer of them, not more of them at a slower, compounding at a lower rate. So,
yeah, I think that's a really reasonable take on it, and you need to empower people to just deal with the problem themselves too. Like you shouldn't face nightmarish legal proceedings for culling a stray animal that's on your own property. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, hell, I mean, right now, here's the other thing. You think, okay, one problem with BSL is that, again, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, just that is the mutt, that's sort of how do I say this? That is the mutt matrix's most heavily defended position, right? Like if you go after, like, to them, they have an unconditional right to own any dog they want, full stop, right? That is the most sacred to them. That is the most sacred of all sacred human rights, okay? That your right to own any dog you want you can never be infringed for any reason ever. And that's their most heavily defended position. Like if you want to use a sort of like a war or some kind of military metaphor, that is their most heavily defended position. So I think the thing to do is just, strategically would be like, one thing we could do is, one is I want legal immunity for anyone using force against a dog in a dog attack. It's like self-defense. Like I want stand your ground and castle doctrine dog laws to apply to this. And in many cases, they're not. Ironically, in Florida, there's you do not have statutory protection if you say stab or shoot a dog that's attacking you. Now, it's not expressly illegal, just that it's not protected. So if you do that, like, again, if you stab or shoot the dog that's, say, attacking you or another person, you actually basically have to beg for mercy from the court because they could slap you with an animal cruelty charge or something else. I want immunity. And again, it's not a comprehensive solution, but solving a problem like this isn't going to take just one thing. It's not like, okay, we're just going to do this and that's it. That's not going to work. There has to be a whole slew of solutions. Again, criminalizing dog attacks, legal immunity for people using force in dog attacks. Restricting dogs by whatever characteristics you deem undesirable, right? And perhaps some other things also. Dog-free areas, right? I mean, we get the service dog provisions vacated. What does that mean? Well, that means, again, like no dogs in the grocery store. It means no pit bulls in the grocery store because dogs shouldn't be in the grocery store at all. So it's probably easier to do that than it is to just maybe restrict a couple of, at least for now, restrict a couple of dog breeds. So that can be part of it also, right? And a lot of those things, show improvements in other areas also. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's okay, but if I can do like a 5-minute little piece on one legal anecdote or a case of someone kind of using the courts to prevail against a dog nutter. I don't know if this is a good
sure.
time.
Yeah, that's always good. Yeah.
So I've been that's kind of the thing that I latched onto was how do we use the available means now, imperfect as they are, to get relief when these dog bullies are ruining your life, right? So kind of from a guerrilla lawfare perspective, I landed on the small claims route, and so that's the preamble here. People that have listened to the last two calls I've been on know all that. So anyway, I was able to touch base with someone who lived in Northern California. They had a barking dog issue next door. They could not use their backyard because the neighbor's dog was just going crazy all the time. So what they did was they gathered evidence. They got a paper log, handwritten, of when the dog barking started and stopped. They got some film that they saved to a USB drive, just to, kind of, hey, video is worth 1,000 words, right? So they did that. They served the dog owner with a demand letter. So once they got the demand letter, it just basically says, hey, you have to stop what you're doing. I can't enjoy my property because of your dog. The dog owner ignored it, of course.
Yep.
Then they hired a process server to serve the dog owner and say, hey, you've got to appear in small claims court. So goes to small claims court. The plaintiff, the person on our side in this case, had all their documentation, put together, and was very polite to the judge. They asked for $1,500. Those damages weren't based on anything other than the loss of enjoyment of their property. And ultimately, the dog owner was just like, well, dogs bark. That was their whole defense, right? So,
Right.
unfortunately, the judge didn't give them all $1,500. They only got $500. But that little victory alone completely dog $500 for the trouble. So, just an example. I'm gathering examples to make sure that this approach that I'm kind of recommending to people does actually work. And, that's one in the win column where we can say, yeah, this has been tested, and, it's something you can reasonably try and have a reasonable chance of prevailing with. So that's my spiel on that. But I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah. I mean, there's things you can do within the existing system. Sometimes, collecting that $500 is another matter, though. But you can attach to, property, right? You could say, have their wages garnished, or, have their car towed away and auctioned off, things like that. And that's the thing too, is that, dog people need to realize that. They say, yeah, dogs bark. See, what are they doing there? They're blaming the dog. But it's like, no, dummy, you brought the dog into the community. That makes it your responsibility, right? And if you don't want
yourself an owner of it, you call yourself the owner of this thing, that implies ownership, implies you have control over it and thus responsibility for what it does. So, there's that piece. And, I just bring these up and I harp on it as kind of like a nice little prod to people on our side that are dealing with the issue, to say, like, hey, you don't have to take it laying down, and you shouldn't take it laying down. There's something you can do. It's not perfect, but you have an option. At least try. Go down fighting. You know what I mean?
Yep. And, ultimately, like, our goal should be to, make those things easier to solve. Not that I'm all for, like, suing them. I'm like 200% for it, but there needs to be, the state has an interest in, preventing these kind of disputes and keeping the peace and so forth. And, my thing is that, what, if there's more than like maybe 3 or 4 complaints about the dog, gone. Now, part of the problem with that is, no kill prevents that, because they can't impound problem dogs because the shelters are all full because of these no kill policies. But yeah, like, for now, there's things you can do. And sometimes even just, threatening somebody with a lawsuit can get them to change their behavior. It worked for me. I didn't actually have to take the nutter neighbor to court. And
when they get that demand letter saying that you're going to sue them, when they get that demand letter saying you're going to sue them, that alone is enough to, kind of take the wind out of their sails, and you probably, won't even have to take it all the way to the mat.
Yeah. It's enough, particularly if they're knowledgeable. The thing, unfortunately, way too many of them are just low functioning people. They don't, they don't understand the potential repercussions of what they're doing. So yeah, sometimes it has to get shoved in their face, and even you get the $500 judgment, and what you got that to beat them over the head with. Like if they return to the behavior, they say, okay, like how much extra money does this person have? They got to do a cost benefit assessment. Okay, how much is the barking lawn ornament worth to them? Right? Are they willing to go bankrupt over it?
Yeah, you can keep taking them to court if they don't change their behavior either. I mean, the merry-go-round continues. So, look, I fully acknowledge that it's completely ridiculous that someone has to go to those lengths to get recourse. The state should be doing this on your behalf. But, it's just, hey, look, it's a tactical way to figure out where's the hole in their armor that we can stab them in.
Yeah.
And you've got to be a little aggressive towards people who are bullying you. Otherwise, they're just not going to stop. So you got to do something. Do what you can.
And that's a good point also, is that when you look at this whole thing holistically, the issue with dogs in society, that, many of these issues overlap, right? Because you say, okay, barking dogs are, dog noise polluters. That overlaps with other aspects of this, right? Because that noisy dog might be a dangerous dog also. So, and vice versa, right? So by addressing one aspect of this, you're sort of indirectly, addressing other aspects of it. So, going after, like, let's say you force the nutter into, say, getting rid of their dog, perhaps let's say over a noise pollution issue, may not definitely, but there's a possibility you spared someone from getting bit. Because that endless, like, aggressive barking, I mean, that is an act of aggression. Endlessly barking dogs are aggressive. It's like somebody who runs around yelling and screaming at people all day. That's an act of aggression. So, yeah, all these issues, overlap. Same thing, if you get, if a dog that bites somebody gets deleted, well, perhaps you're saving somebody from a noise pollution issue, right? And the thing just goes back, say, like pit bull bans that, I mean, too, it's like, a pit bull ban really only partially addresses, well, at least directly, the dangerous dog problem, but it does, like if we could actually like delete them, that would address many other dog related problems, perhaps indirectly, because you get problems like, say, dog at large, aggressive barking, service dog fraud. Pit bulls are involved in those things also. Now, of course, those people may substitute for another kind of dog, but still, those things are addressed there also. Like when I put together my draft letter to, restrict service dogs, I said, look, because people are going to say, oh yeah, we'll ban pit bulls as service dogs. But the thing is, if you apply even the most minimal standards to that, the service pits are gone. They're gone because you can't train a pit to do anything. The use case is to basically attack and kill. That's it, right? They're not. They can't be used as guide dogs for the blind or anything else. So that sort of indirectly addresses like some of the pit bull problems. So yeah, you know what? Yeah, sue them over the noisy dog, because it might not only address that problem, but other aspects of this also.
It's like in Terminator 1 where the good guy is describing what the Terminator is to Sarah Connor. Like, this thing can't be reasoned with. It will not stop. Like that dialogue is, really pretty apt for dog nutters and dogs. They've just got to face consequences, and that's really all there is to it. And people always say, like, oh, just go have a friendly. Look, the point of the small claims thing, it sounds insane, but why I'm harping on it is it's a legal remedy. It's something you can do without getting in trouble yourself or exposing yourself to danger. Don't go, you can't just go shoot a dog. You can't poison it. You can't do things that's just going to get you in trouble.
Yep.
And just, all the people that say stuff like, oh, we'll just have a friendly conversation with your neighbor. We're beyond that point. So you need to enforce consequences. You're not just going to be able to talk it out, although the law does require that you at least try to remedy the issue before you go to small claims. But, don't do anything crazy. There's really kind of an easy way to deal with the issue using the courts. It's not hard.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, my policy is that you do have to. It's like, okay, if I have an issue with a dog person, like say the endlessly barking dog, I will, and this is just from experience, I'll ask, like, if I approach him, it's like, okay, I'm going to ask you to silence your dog politely once, this one time. Okay. And if you don't do it, then yeah, it escalates. Like, I'm going to escalate everything. I'm not going to endlessly try to plead or reason with them. And I think you could call it, the term is a necessary fail, because like you said, it's like you have to like go through these motions if you want to win in court. You have to talk to the dog owner. Usually have to call animal control and or police and report it. And, it's like, okay, you're confident these things won't work, because very often they don't. But that makes your case in court a lot stronger, because you say, look, I tried to resolve this just between us neighbors. I tried to, go through authorities, and yet the problem persists. So that's why I'm here in court today.
Yeah, judges are lazy and they don't want to work. So if you, by and large, I'm making a sweeping generalization, but they get annoyed that they have to do a thing when you come to court. So if you can show that you tried everything you could to avoid making them work that day, that goes a long way with them. You're baiting the hook to suit the fish. You want to get your way with the judge, so you have to appear as the good guy and get him to see that, hey, I could be golfing right now, but this guy can't control his dog. You want him thinking in that kind of vein versus. So that's the whole point of like reaching out before you go to court. It's like necessary fail is the perfect term for it.
Yep. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up, because I want to see if I can get this posted tonight. So I got to do the whole, export and uploading thing. The other thing I noted real quick was that, last week's call didn't get as many views as I normally get. And I'm thinking, okay, why was that? And of course, the reason was, I would expect that, the attempted assassination on former president and current candidate Donald Trump sort of, got sort of distracted away from this. And, perhaps justifiably so. That's a major event. Actually, it might be one of the biggest events of the lifetimes of most people. You say, oh, where were you when, this happened? When JFK was assassinated or the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. Actually, I have a story for that, but I'll maybe share it some other time. So that, that probably drew. I had noticed that too with some of the other channels. It seems like the past week or so, the views and the comments and so forth have been way down, because people are distracted by other political issues. So.
Yeah, I think sometimes events like that can just suck the air out of the room. And, I just want to take a second to get on my knees and make a heartfelt apology to our host and whoever's listening. There's probably going to be a little bit of road noise. That's
all right. It's actually better. I funny, I tell people, it's like, that's the thing is like, not a lot of people do calls. Most folks in the space that do monologue. Chef does calls, Sheepy does calls. But that's the problem is, like, when you do calls, you can't, if you do a monologue, you can control everything. If you do a call, you can't, right? And sometimes people have There is background. Sometimes you even get barking dogs in the background of some of these things. So
yeah, I mean, it's just I try to be. You're putting a lot of work into it, and I try to be conscientious. So I fully acknowledge that. Hey, I dropped the ball today on planning and stuff like that. But I think
that's all right.
if we keep doing the calls and if you want to keep having me on as a guest periodically, I'm probably just going to get a microphone or something.
Yeah, well, that's the thing to do is, I have, that's probably the problem with doing it with phones, because even after 30 years of ubiquitous cell phones, you still have reception issues, right? It's like, why hasn't that been fixed by now? It's still a problem. I mean, back in the 90s and the technology was new, it was like, okay, there's some additional fault tolerance there, but it's still a problem. So, what I have is, I have a Dell laptop that's docked. So, it's connected to, mouse, keyboard, monitor, speakers, and I have a pedestal microphone. Actually, I bought it off of Amazon. It's an $18 microphone, but so it's not ideal, but it's the sound quality it's good enough. Right, it's good enough. So I think, and Sheepy went with the same thing. She got a microphone, and so the audio from her end has been a lot better. It's like, trying to do this on a phone, it just doesn't. It can work, but you're better off, like I said, using a PC and a microphone and all that. So just something to think
so I'll
about.
correct that. I mean, this is the third, we'll call it, podcast that I've ever been on. So, please allow me a little bit of learning curve. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I won't make the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah, they don't want to be like, well, you should listen. Like some of the when I first started doing these calls, it was like really bad. I mean, if this call is like a 2 on a 10 scale, some of these were 10, it'd be like, dude, it sounds like your house is being torn down with you in it. I mean, it's just all these, like, it's almost like this thundering, like clicks and bumps and boops and all that. It's like, yeah, I was on the pool deck of the, Champlain Towers when it collapsed. I mean, that's what it sounds like, some of them. So don't worry about it too much. I wanted to, it's interesting to now we're talking about it, but it's interesting is that, I know you're a developer, I'm a developer also, but there's a Python library called Noise Reduce. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but what you do is it's a Python add-on library that'll take basically 2 data sources. It'll take, your main recording, or at least the audio anyway, and you can split, like in Clipchamp, and actually there's various tools. You can split the audio out of one of these recordings. So you can split the audio out. You can add audio back in. Like I could add, say, background music to this if I wanted to pretty easily. But so what it does, so the Noise Reduce takes 2 inputs, right? 2 data sources, the main audio and also the sound that you want to eliminate. So that second source, like let's say we have one of these calls and there's barking dogs in the background, you'd give it the record, the sample of the barking dogs, and it's this AI fuzzy logic routine will, cancel out the whatever that undesirable background noise is, right? And I've looked at it. I do a lot of Python development. I've never used that though, because this aspect of data processing is something I've never really gotten into. It's definitely not my forte, but that would be interesting. And part of the problem with these two is you can't compare this to, say, the Joe Rogan podcast, because, he's got a whole staff of people. First of all, he does in-studio interviews, right? And probably some of these people get all expenses paid. So he does in-studio, and I can't do that, right? It's like I don't have the means for it. And he has, probably a team of engineers that are constantly tweaking the video and audio quality. And I don't have the means for that either. So, some people, occasionally there's a complaint about that kind of stuff. Oh, there's some background noise, or somebody's coming in too loud or too soft. It's like, hey, you know what? That's just, it is what it is. Right?
Yeah, start your own podcast if you don't like it. I mean, it's almost one of those like
Yeah, exactly. Go listen to Rogan talk about how much he loves his pit bulls.
Yeah, how they're sweethearts. But yeah, hey, did you want to say something on anti-mutt.org or something like that? Were there any new developments there?
Yeah, well, you know what? I have a bunch of emails to answer because I'm still talking to Ariel in the background, and I may get him on a call. I don't have, and there's really been nothing's moved on that front yet. I mean, what we're looking for is, some people who would commit to essentially joining the .org, like donating some time, effort, money, perhaps, to getting it stood up. We're not at that point yet, and I don't. It'll happen. Perhaps not too soon. The problem I have is, you think, why don't, like, for example, I just be the point of the spear? But the thing is, what's needed is we need somebody with knowledge of how to do, say, direct lobbying and the like, to sort of spearhead this. Because I'm always the first person to say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing. I always admit that
exactly.
readily. You were talking about this. It's like, yeah, I am a data processing person, but cleaning up this audio and video is not an area that I'm competent in. Maybe I will become so at some point, but that's the same thing. It's like a lobbying organization, like that, sort of a PAC or, political action group. It is just not something I'm familiar with. I mean, I only understand those things at the most abstract level. Other things I am, for example, I've run a couple of for-profit businesses. I have, done, I was a hike leader for a while, as an officer in my state hiking organization. So, I can organize, but I don't know how to organize something like that. It's not like hikes, because I've been hiking since I was a kid. I was never a Boy Scout, which most people probably find surprising or not. But, I was involved in a lot of, organized outdoors and hiking organizations, even as a teenager. So, organizing hikes, at a formal level was a pretty easy transition, right? But something like this, anti-mutt.org, I don't know how to stand up something like that. So and I could help, but yeah, we need somebody with that kind of background to get this stood up. So I'm doing a shout out. If there's people out there with that background, great. Let me know. And the other thing I thought too is that, there may be eventually paid opportunities here. Now, there's other economic opportunities, like Ariel was saying. There's, if you're an attorney, particularly if you're an attorney with that background, there's an opportunity to expand your business, right? If you're a civil trial attorney, because you've got, a lot of people out there with, cause to sue dog owners, or perhaps some of these doggy orgs, those kind of.
I mean, chase the ambulance, and
Yeah, yep.
it's really a good thing, because you'd help a lot of people and start creating deterrence for these dog owners. And even stuff like, the small claims thing, hey, that's how you can do it DIY with very little budget. But honestly, I always recommend people that have the means, get a lawyer to do it. It's going to
Yep.
work out better and be easier if you've got the money. And but so there's an avenue for lawyers there too, if they want to pitch themselves to people who are in this position. You don't even have to necessarily be suing for a ton of damages, but people need help with demand letters. They need help with process serving, stuff like that. There's a whole niche here that people can get into.
Yeah, yeah. So it's something for folks to think about. And I actually have this. Some folks have been writing me. I owe some emails. In fact, there's somebody I wanted to get back to who had an interest in joining one of these calls. I need to write them back. And I owe Ariel an email and a few other folks also. Again, that's the other thing too, we also need people who have, the spare capacity to work on stuff like this. Because many of us, we're just working stiffs. Right. We got to like survive first. Right. So that's sort of an impediment also. Part of the problem is our adversary is very well funded. So, they're able to, dedicate their careers to this.
And it's people whose full-time paycheck comes from spreading the dog cult.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, if they work well, even if you look at the SPCA or whoever it was is offering a $5,000 reward for finding whoever dumped those pit bulls. It's like, those organizations have lots of money and they have paid activists. They're not people just volunteering. They have volunteers also, I guess at a lower level, but they have actual paid activists. And perhaps at some point we could do the same thing on our side. We need somebody, we need a rich person to donate a lot of money.
Yeah, well, part of it is continuing outreach, continuing to find people, continuing to do long form podcasts like this one, because I work all day. I'm a developer. I usually have something like this on in the background, listening to it. That stuff's more effective than you think. People need content. They want to listen to stuff, and that, it's just about connecting the dots and networking and building a bigger network and finding those people who are in the same position and just getting them to dedicate their talents to fixing the problem. There's a wealthy, influential person out there whose life is being ruined by a dog. We just got to find them. Like I know they're there.
Yep. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. Like I said, we're at about an hour and a half. So that's about all I can put into it today, because I got to, tweak the video and export it and upload it. And I'd like to premiere it today if I can. So, maybe in 3-4 hours, which is going to be a little tight, but I can get it out there. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining. This is Animal on Control. And as always, people first. Thanks, man. Catch you soon.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks. Later, man. Everybody.